Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the sports betting show brought to you by a real statistics professor. Because how'd you feel about that intro music? That was
that was some interesting selections, I guess. But hey, it works for me. It got me in the mood to talk college basketball. I guess that's really all that matters.
I guess that's true. We've got a bunch of those to try. The software that we use.
So don't get too attached to it as well.
Well, I don't know because I've not actually played with it, but there's other like weird intro things. Like there's one that looks like another planet that was, I don't know. And then there's like this like futuristic one and there's these like blocks. So we'll try all of them. And I have no idea if they come with different music or not. So we'll have some fun with that. But I feel like to really get us in the mood, we gotta roll with this after our little cold open here. 2, 3, 4. There we go. Now we're ready to go. College basketball for Thursday, November 14th. Again, we are live here. If you're hopping into the chat, if you have games that you are interested in, drop those in the chat. If you have questions, drop those, and we'll do our best to answer any reasonable questions. There's a person or two out there who I'm saying the word reasonable for, and you know who you are. But we always love your questions. Tuesday was a pretty good night. Wednesday's looking a little hit or miss. We're hitting some, we're not hitting some. It's always weird. It's Wednesday night. We're talking about Thursday. I can only recap Tuesday. I don't know. Here we are.
Not like we have problems keeping track of time anyway.
What is time? What are days? We did go 2-1 on the show for Tuesday, winning the first two. We missed the Duke and Kentucky, which the first half did exactly like we thought. Were a ton of points. In the second half, I don't know what happened. It completely, came to a standstill, it seemed like. And then I made the comment, I think that the Arkansas-Troy game might be similar to that in the first half of that, starting off like the second half of Duke, Kentucky. So we'll see how the three that we did yesterday go. But again, just kind of that little recap there. If you're interested, again, join us over on Dub Club. We've got a great Discord chat. We've got a lot of information. And the link in the show description there will get you half off your first month. I feel like everyone's probably already seen this slide before, so I don't really need to stay too long on it. And of course, some reminders about the model. It's player-based, so ready to reflect the current roster. Again, the average grade's 100. Higher implies more points. We are projecting an average game, one game. Who knows what will happen? And we see that every night. But the idea is that especially in college basketball, we're already talking about it here. It can be, you can have a love-hate relationship. I always joke for me, it's more hate than love because it can be frustrating. So we always talk about part of being a good sports bettor is the sanity of making it through, the frustrating times. But we know what prices and numbers make for good bets in the long run, even though one game is unpredictable. Model gives A, B, or C, love, like, lean. We choose the plays. We'll get right to it here pretty early on. Coppin State and UMBC, Cousin Jared. Not one of the marquee games on Thursday, but there aren't a lot of good games on Thursday.
Slim pickings.
It's slim pickings. There are three that the model thinks will be interesting. We will talk about two of those. The third interesting game would be Grand Canyon and Arizona State, both top 100 teams playing, I believe, in Phoenix. So that could be an interesting contest as well. This one, not one that you're probably going to want to watch with regards to the quality. These are rough basketball teams, especially Coppin State down at number 361. There are only 366 this year college basketball teams in Division I. So that's very, very bad. They aren't very good on offense whatsoever, but when you look at the pace that UMBC plays with, they tend to score a lot of points, and that's why we're going to go over 144.5 B grade, almost to an A grade. If you can find a 144, that gives the model A grade approval, as we've got the average game having 148 points. Because, Jared, 148, that's in the ballpark of what an average college basketball game has had early on, and I say that because give another couple days and that average will change. We're early on in the season. We think this will play out kind of like an average game. The sports books are thinking it'll be below average. And Coppin State's not going to push the pace, and their offense is really bad. But the flip side of that's UMBC kind of counteracts all of that. What's your take on it?
Yeah, so I want to spend most of my time talking about UMBC here. And if this is your first time watching this show with me on it, I don't know if Jake has an affinity for the retrievers from UMBC like I do. But if you ever get the opportunity, viewer and listener, to take a flyer on a UMBC over, I highly recommend that you do that. That pace right there is something to be marveled at. And unless, I know that Coppin has a slower pace, but unless you are just really like a North Texas level, take the air out of the ball, you are not going to be able to counteract the pace at which UMBC wants to play. They just want to get up and down the court. So UMBC has played 3 games so far this season. They scored 95 points against Penn State York, not Penn State, York.
Yeah.
They only scored
who might be better than Coppin State, to be honest.
That is true. They did, and I will admit this could be a potential issue. UMBC did only score 54 points against the real Penn State, but do not fret. They gave up 103. And then they played some poor school named Valley Forge in their last game. They scored 120. Even if you're playing a school called Valley Forge, which, we're all for, the Continentals there in the American Revolution, 120 points, like you have to play with a very certain type of style and mindset to score 120 points in any college basketball game, regardless who opponent is. So I love this over. I think UMBC can make any type of game go over. Briefly on Coppin State, like I have to admit, offense is very bad.
Yeah.
There is definitely a cap on what they can do. I don't think they've scored more than 54 or 55 points in a game this season. But I think you really only need Coppin State to get to like between 55 and 60. And I think this is a winner. And so I think that pace that UMBC has can partially counteract that terrible offense from Coppin State. And of course, UMBC terrible on defense as well. So I think that'll counteract and can get Coppin State to about 60 points or so.
It's interesting, UMBC at this point has played I assume Division II, but one of those might be Division III or NAIA for all I know.
Who knows?
Someone knows out there who's what, but it's not me. And then they played Penn State, not that Penn State's, a top 10 team, but like they're way out of the class of UMBC. So they haven't played anybody even remotely near them. And they're favored by, about 10-ish or so. The model says about 10 here against Coppin State. So it's not that Coppin State is like in their league as much as it is like they're a heck of a lot closer, I think, than anybody they've played so far. Right. And so it'll be interesting. But we talked about it here recently, right? That all data can be useful. You just have to figure out how to use it and what it means. And you brought up a great point there. When they played somebody really good, their pace allowed them to give up 100. And when they play 2 teams that were bad, their pace allowed them to score 100. And not necessarily that we'll have 100 in this game. But the idea is that it should balance that out, right? And that's what someone in the comment said that they played last year's 89-70. That's kind of what we're saying. Like it should kind of balance out where it's like they're not going to give up 100. They're not going to get to 100, but it's going to be elevated for both of them is how we see that playing out. It's always more fun. Like you said, unless it's that North Texas, there's been a couple other teams. Wagner will try to do it. These teams who really just like you should try to take the air out of the ball. Other than that, if you start going slower, and that's your normal pace. When you play a team like UMBC, it's just real easy to get caught up and go back and forth with them because it's much more fun as a player to do. It's easier to people. I don't know why the common wisdom is easier to slow a team down than speed them up. I don't know. Maybe that's true in like the tournament. Or conference play, I don't know, but like in non-conference play for sure, I don't think that's the case at all.
No.
So we're going to go over 144.5 B grade again, over 144 is an A grade as we've got it at 148. Northern Iowa and Wichita State, one of the better games of the night. Both teams just outside sidelines top 100. We've got this at 155, so we're going to go over 152 as a B grade. Because we've seen a lot of numbers move with these totals. A handful of them have gone 4 or 5 points the direction of the model. A handful of them have gone 4 or 5 points the opposite way of the model. It's been a lot of movement here in the overnights into the morning and even sometimes from the morning into the night. So just keep an eye on this. We've got it at 155. We like the over 152. We're not playing the over at 157 if it happens to get up to that number, right? Yeah. So just keep an eye on that, of course, depending on when you're watching this. Because Jordan, why do you like this over?
Yeah, I like this one because Wichita State so far this season, they played Western Kentucky. That game got to 100 and a lot, 175. But that was Western Kentucky. If you go look at the pace metrics, Western Kentucky is way high up there. So I was more apt to write that one off from Wichita State. But then they played Montana State, who is just, not necessarily strong one way or the other as far as pace and offense goes. And that game got up to over 150 points as well. So that one is a game that kind of opened my eyes. It's like, hey, maybe Wichita State sidelines trying to do a little catch up here on maybe their pace or how good their offense is. And flipping it around to Northern Iowa, every game they've played so far has at least gotten to 140 points. And they've even been able to drag a team like Milwaukee, who is not super good offensively, not necessarily looking to push the pace. Northern Iowa was able to drag them to a game that got into 150. So I just feel like this is going to be it's not like UMBC where anything is exceptionally fast in this game, or either team is exceptionally good on offense or exceptionally bad on defense. It's just kind of both teams are better on offense. They like to go a little bit quicker, or in the case of Wichita State, at least. And then their defense are just a step or two behind the offenses in this game. So to your point, I feel like we've been saying it for a couple of years now that it's so much easier to speed a team up than it is to slow them down. And I think that's what's going to happen here between these two teams.
A lot of times we'll have an edge on something, and I can kind of point exactly why it is. I'll say, hey, we're really high on this team. Look what they've done. They've been really good to us, and the model's been high on them, and we're just going to keep writing it because the model still likes them, right? Or, we're really down on this team or whatever. And other times I can't really explain it. Just, hey, the model thinks there's an edge here. I'm not really exactly sure why, but in the long run, we kind of trust these things. And this one, I can tell you exactly why. Everything looks pretty balanced and average with regard to the efficiencies. It's really all about the pace. And I think what's happening is the books are hanging a total that would be pretty accurate if you just averaged the two paces. And what I found in my research is that averaging the two paces, until you get to tournament play, is not really the best way to look at it. It should tilt towards the faster team, like you were saying, except in those outlier cases, those bottom like 3 or 4 teams who are just, not going to change their pace. And that's what the model's doing. So the model's just saying there's a slight edge here, and the books haven't gone quite high enough. The average team, again, we're in the 148-ish range right now, 149, whatever. And the books are saying, oh, well, it should be a little bit higher than that, 152. And the model's saying, actually, it's going to tilt a little bit more to Wichita State's favor on the pace rather than just averaging them, because, again, it's easier to speed them up than slow them down. And so that's kind of the bottom line. Who knows who will get hot? Who knows how the end of the game will play out, right? If it's one of those, we talk about a close game where, a team, it's within one possession and everybody just slows it down, or a close game where there's fouls, or a close game where there's overtime, right? So there's no locks in gambling, so we never know how that'll play out. But on average, we're thinking that they're just a little bit low here at 152, so we're going over that number with a B grade. But folks, as always, remember, shop around, especially as these lines move. Cannot say it enough. If you don't have an account there yet, check out BetUS. Also, again, while we thank them for keeping the lights on, the other way to help us keep the lights on here is to support the show on Dub Club. If you're interested and you are not a part of it yet, at least check out the picks only package for $19.99 per month. Just the picks. It's a cheaper price point. Every top play, every play period will get you a handful of plays if you're looking for some extra bets on top of what we do on the show, some promo codes to get you some discounts. Again, we thank our sponsor BetUS for helping us keep the lights on, and you can help us do that as well if you check out that package over on Dub Club. We'll wrap up here with the game of the night according to the model: LSU and Kansas State. Kansas State inside sidelines top 25, LSU inside the top 100. We've got Kansas State winning this by an average of 12.5 points. The Octagon of Doom being a very tough place to play. We're only having to lay 5. This is one of our top plays here. We've got 2 that we really like here on a relatively short slate Thursday, because this slate reminds me more of a Monday, where we've done a lot of these shows in the past, these Mondays where we're kind of like, we got 2 good games. We're going to have to pick a random third one, right? It's kind of like that. I think there's only 19 games maybe, but of the 19, this is one of the top 2 that we like the most, only having to like 5 with Kansas State. Cousin Jared, as always, why do you like Kansas State? Also, what number are you willing to lay it up to with them?
Yeah,
I want to know. I want to answer that one too.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you asked that question, because we were able to grab lay in 5 points earlier. Now it's 5.5, some places 6. Still like it at 5.5 or 6. Really, for me, when I would start to kind of have a little bit more pause, would be 7, just because you're outside of that 2-possession game. Most teams are still going to foul at that number, but not 100% sure that they're going to do it. Anytime that you can get below, 6 or below, kind of like we talked about with Kansas last time I was on the show. Same thing there. That game was fairly close late, like 4 or 5 points, and Kansas was able to get us over with some free throws there towards
Sweating
the end.
It at the very end, yeah.
yes. Which I will give the books all of the credit for all of the randomness that happens within college basketball. The fact that they can get so many of these games where one shot at the very end is kind of the difference between winning and losing. I have to give a hat tip to them. So I like it up to 7, 7.5. I would probably still play it. 8's where I'm like, I don't know at that point. But my main thing here is, and for me, this isn't so much about Kansas State. Neither of these teams has necessarily played anybody of note so far this season, so not necessarily taking much from the results so far. I just think that LSU was a middling team last year. I think we all knew that Will Wade, when he left a couple of years ago, was a really good coach. I think that the expectation was he had built it up to a level that LSU was going to be able to remain being a higher level, upper echelon, SEC type team, and that just wasn't the case last year, especially defensively. They had some issues. One of the worst defensive teams in the country, giving up 75 points a game. I just do not see that being a good combination for the first true road test for the season for them. Like you mentioned, going into Manhattan, it's a tough place to play. I see that Kansas State has got the edge offensively. I think, based on what I just said, has the advantage defensively as well. I don't see any advantages for LSU in this game. And the fact that we can get it at a number that's less than 2 possessions currently, I think is just too much value to pass up.
And Will Wade, is he the one that ended up at Nichols? Is that
McNeese? Yeah, he's at McNeese.
Wrong, random Louisiana school. Sorry, apologies to anybody who goes to either one of those schools, but I was like, one of those Louisiana schools. I can't remember. It has done magnificent things for them. They've never seen as well. So, like I said, a lot can sometimes boil down to the coach, which is maybe also the players, but the coach is the recruiting part of it, right? Which matters there. And so, we're going to lay it with Kansas State. I think the other thing to consider here, and I think you kind of mentioned it, but just that first road game, any road game in general in non-conference is tough. There's a reason why a lot of these bigger schools don't even play a road game until you get to conference play, or it's just one, later in December or something. It's all these neutral site games and home games. These road games are tough. And not to say that Kansas State can't win close or that LSU can't pull the upset, but in general, there's a lot more ways that Kansas State pulls away and runs away with this game, or like you said, gets there with the late fouls. I'm thinking personally, I asked you about your number. I'm playing it up to 7 for sure. 7.5, 8. I think it's probably still worth a little bit, but maybe a little bit less at that point. And then at that point, you still have a little bit of value, but we have to understand that, the model is going to say there's 3-point edges on a lot of these games. And that doesn't mean there isn't a 3-point edge, but if there's a 3-point edge, what that means is literally one shot over the course of the game can change it. And so we were looking for stuff that's actually bigger than that, because we don't want one shot to ruin our night. We want it to have to be multiple things go wrong, right? And so that's why we're sometimes looking for these bigger edges like we have here. So again, we laid 5. We sent that out to everybody on Dub Club earlier. It's still 5.5 in some places, 6 in others. Still perfectly happy to lay that. Again, hopefully you can get it at least at that number. If not, as we always say, shop around early on a lot of these. Sometimes it doesn't go our way. Most of the time it does. Those are the 3 games we're going to cover here. Cousin Jared, parting words for our viewers.
So I really wanted to be able to come on here and say, hey, you need to join us on Dub Club, because we gave away a last minute college football winner here on a Tuesday night. Unfortunately, I cannot say that
Wednesday
as of yet. Wednesday night. I cannot say that as of yet.
We're still a field goal away.
Yeah, I'm confident that we will get there, but just can't quite say it yet. So anyway,
touchdown away.
Yeah,
we got almost there in the first half. We were pretty close to cashing it in the first half, and now we're still waiting in the third quarter. So this would be one of the worst beats of all time if it doesn't come through for us. So.
Yeah, it would. But the point still stands. We've got the shows where we give out picks and everything, but we've got some stuff in addition to the picks that are Dub Club exclusive. We're watching lines a lot of the time, and so right before kickoff, saw a line move to past a certain number. We sent it out to people on Dub Club less than an hour before kickoff. And so not only are you getting all the other picks, you're kind of getting some last minute updates and stuff from us as well. So just another benefit of joining us over there on Dub Club.
Very well said. And I always talk about I'm a terrible salesman, which is unfortunate given that this is, again, one of the main ways we keep our lights on. But again, I do the math and the math makes us money. And so that's really all that matters. Again, viewer, we do thank you for watching. We wish you the best of luck. And we remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.